Hello, welcome to Secret Zone. Subscribe and turn on notifications for stories you won't forget. The phone rang at a moment when my life still felt ordinary, when trust was something I never questioned and love felt like a permanent shelter rather than something fragile. I remember sitting in the living room that evening, the soft hum of the television filling the space. My wife's coffee cup still warm on the table beside me. The house felt familiar, safe, like it always had. When the phone vibrated across the table, I barely glanced at it at first. I wasn't suspicious. I wasn't afraid. I trusted my wife completely. The way you trust the ground beneath your feet without ever thinking it might collapse. The call stopped after a few seconds, and I told myself it was probably spam or a wrong number. But then it rang again. And again. Something about the persistence made my chest tighten, not with fear, but with a quiet unease I couldn't explain. I answered on the third ring, expecting nothing more than a meaningless interruption. Instead, a stranger's voice spoke my name with certainty, and in that instant, the world I knew began to crack. I listened in silence as words spilled out that made no sense at first, words that felt misplaced, unreal, like they belonged to someone else's life. When the call ended, the room felt colder, emptier, as if the air itself had shifted. I sat there holding the phone, staring at nothing, trying to convince myself that what I had just heard couldn't possibly be true. At that moment, I still believed trust could protect me from pain. I still believed love meant safety. I had no idea that one simple phone call had already set fire to everything I thought was unbreakable. My name is not important at first, because for years, my identity was built around one thing: being a husband who believed in his marriage. My wife and I had been married for 7 years. A love marriage built on friendship, romance, and a kind of trust that felt rare in today's world. We had no children, not because we didn't want them, but because we believed in taking our time, enjoying life together, building something strong before adding more to it. We traveled when work allowed, shared quiet mornings over coffee, and talked about the future with certainty and excitement. She was intelligent, ambitious, admired by everyone around her. I was stable, successful in my own way, proud of the life we had created together. To the outside world, we were the couple people pointed to when they talked about balance and loyalty, and I believed it too. I never checked her phone. I never questioned her schedule. I never doubted her words. If she said she was working late, I believed her. If she said she was tired, I supported her. Trust, to me, wasn't something that needed proof. It was a foundation, solid and unquestioned. But looking back now, I realize how quietly things were changing. How small shifts in behavior can hide behind busy lives and professional success. How love can sometimes make you overlook silence, distance, and moments that don't quite add up. That night, before the phone rang, I still believed I was living the truth. I didn't know that my marriage was already standing on borrowed time, or that the trust I valued more than anything had already been used against me. That phone call didn't just bring information. It brought awareness. And once awareness arrives, there's no way to return to the comfort of ignorance. That was the beginning of everything falling apart, and the beginning of a journey that would force me to learn what trust really costs and what it takes to move forward when it's gone. I used to believe that trust was something you either had or didn't. Once broken, it was gone forever. But back then, I never imagined I would be the one learning that lesson the hard way. My marriage felt solid, grounded in shared routines and quiet understanding rather than dramatic gestures. My wife, Lauren Hayes, and I had chosen a life that valued stability, honesty, and mutual respect. There were no loud fights, no obvious cracks. From the outside, we looked like a couple who had figured things out. Lauren was intelligent, confident, and admired wherever she went. She carried herself with calm authority, the kind that made people listen when she spoke. I respected her deeply, not just as my partner, but as a person. She worked in corporate strategy, a demanding field that required long hours, discretion, and constant communication. I never questioned that. I never felt the need to. Trust, to me, meant believing without checking. Our days followed a familiar rhythm. Mornings were peaceful, evenings predictable. Even when we didn't talk much, the silence felt comfortable, earned. But slowly, almost imperceptibly, that rhythm began to change. Lauren started coming home later than usual, not once or twice often. She explained it as work pressure, last-minute meetings, urgent calls. I accepted every explanation without hesitation. I wanted to be supportive, not suspicious. Still, something subtle shifted. She became more distant, though never unkind. Her attention drifted elsewhere during conversations. Her phone, once casually left face down on the table, stayed locked in her hand. Messages arrived that made her smile softly, smiles that didn't reach her eyes when she looked at me. When I asked how her day went, her answers were brief, polished, almost neat, as if details had been intentionally removed. I noticed these things, but I dismissed them. I told myself that overthinking destroys relationships. I reminded myself that not every change is a threat. Love, I believed, required patience and faith. So I stayed quiet. I chose trust over doubt, even when doubt knocked gently at my thoughts. Then came the phone call. It was an ordinary evening. Lauren had left early that morning, promising we'd spend time together soon. Her phone lay on the kitchen table while she was in the shower. It rang once. I ignored it. It rang again, and again. The persistence unsettled me. Against my instincts, I answered. A man's voice asked for Lauren. When I said she wasn't available, there was a pause long enough to feel intentional. "Who are you to her?" he asked. That single question drained the air from my lungs. His tone wasn't aggressive, but it was confident, familiar. He spoke as though he had a right to know. When I pressed him, his words became careful, measured, and devastating. He believed Lauren was someone else's partner. He believed they shared more than conversations. He ended the call abruptly, leaving me standing there with a phone that suddenly felt heavier than anything I had ever held. When Lauren stepped out of the shower, towel around her shoulders, I looked at her and realized something terrifying. I wasn't sure who she was anymore. I didn't confront her. I didn't accuse her. I said nothing at all. But in that silence, my entire life began to unravel. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was angry, but because my mind refused to settle. Every memory replayed itself differently now, as if the past had quietly rearranged while I wasn't looking. The phone call hadn't given me proof, it had given me suspicion. And suspicion, when paired with silence, becomes unbearable. For the next 20 days, I watched. Quietly, carefully. I didn't change my behavior. I didn't question her routines. I let Lauren believe nothing had shifted. And in that space of observation, the truth began to reveal itself, piece by piece. Patterns formed. Late nights, always on the same days. Meetings that never appeared on calendars. Business trips that left no digital trail. I started documenting everything, not emotionally, but methodically. Dates, times, expenses. I hired a professional investigator, not because I wanted revenge, but because I needed certainty. Trust had been my weakness. Facts would be my protection. What emerged was worse than I imagined. Lauren wasn't just involved with another man of Von Mercer, a private equity operator with a reputation for aggressive acquisitions. They weren't meeting casually. They were planning hotels, private apartments, discreet restaurants. And then came the most devastating discovery. Financial discussions. My name appeared in messages. My assets. My accounts. My investments. Lauren and Evan weren't just betraying me emotionally. They were planning to take everything I had built. The investigator showed me evidence of intimacy, of secret meetings, of conversations, outlining a strategy. Evan would push me into emotional collapse. Lauren would file for divorce at the most vulnerable moment. Assets would be liquidated quickly. Control would be transferred quietly. I wasn't just a husband being betrayed, I was a target. And still, I didn't confront her. I needed protection, not confrontation. That's when I contacted Marcus Reed, a senior divorce and asset protection attorney known for discretion and precision. When I laid everything out in front of him, he didn't react emotionally. He nodded slowly and said, "You did the right thing by waiting." Together, we built a wall around everything Lauren thought she could take. Accounts were secured. Trusts reorganized. Evidence preserved. Legal traps avoided. And when the time came, Marcus filed the divorce papers with surgical timing. Lauren didn't see it coming. The confrontation happened not in anger, but in silence. When she realized I knew everything about Evan, about the money, about the plan, her confidence collapsed. She cried. She apologized. She blamed confusion, pressure, love, fear. I listened without responding, because betrayal doesn't deserve an argument. It deserves consequences. The divorce moved quickly. Lauren lost her leverage. Evan disappeared. He had no interest in a woman without access to wealth. And just like that, the future they planned evaporated. Months passed. My life grew quieter, but clearer. I focused on work, on rebuilding, on rediscovering who I was without deception clouding every thought. I wasn't bitter. I wasn't angry, but Imera, wise awake. One morning, during my routine walk at a nearby park, I saw her. Lauren stood near the path, thinner, uncertain, waiting. She called my name softly. When I stopped, she apologized. Not dramatically, just tired, broken. I didn't realize what I was losing, she said. I looked at her, really looked, and felt nothing. No hate, no longing, just distance. I nodded politely and walked past her without a word. That moment was my victory. The days after the phone call felt like walking through fog. I couldn't focus, couldn't sleep. And even the small things like the hum of my morning coffee machine or the sound of traffic outside felt sharp, almost unbearable. Every ring of a phone made my heart leap. Every message notification sent a jolt through me. I had trusted her completely, believed in her entirely. And now that belief had shattered in one fleeting moment. I began observing things differently, noticing details I had once ignored. Her laugh, which used to make the whole house feel warm, now sounded rehearsed, hollow, as though it was meant for someone else. Her words were measured, precise, carefully chosen. And I realized they were designed to hide more than to share. For weeks, I wrestled with myself. Should I confront her? Should I gather evidence? Should I simply walk away? But something inside me demanded clarity before action. I started following patterns. I wasn't spying in a criminal sense. I was seeking truth, desperately needing proof of what my heart already feared. Late evenings became a routine of observation rather than rest. I noted the times she left the house, the pauses in her conversations, the subtle changes in tone whenever her phone buzzed. Each tiny detail felt like a puzzle piece, a breadcrumb leading to a truth I didn't want, but needed. Then came the night I finally saw it with my own eyes. I hadn't planned to, but instinct guided me. Through the softly lit streets, past the familiar cafe where we had shared countless memories, I found her. She was there, not alone, not with a client, not with a colleague, but with him. His name was Nathan Caldwell, a man she had introduced as a friend, harmless and professional. But the way they looked at each other, the subtle touches, the closeness, that wasn't necessary for friendship at all, screamed betrayal. I watched from a distance as they entered a small, dimly lit apartment. I didn't need to see more to know the truth, but I did. I waited, my chest tight, my hands shaking, as the door closed behind them. I didn't confront her that night. I didn't yell. I didn't demand explanations. He simply left, driving home with a quiet fury, a mix of heartbreak and resolve. I realized then that some confrontations aren't meant to happen immediately. Some truths are meant to be confirmed, documented, and understood before action. I needed someone I could trust, someone who could help me bring clarity to the chaos of lies and half-truths that had surrounded me. The next morning, I found him. Not Nathan, not yet, but someone who could help expose the layers of deception. Michael Evans, a private investigator with impeccable discretion and years of experience, became my eyes and my shield. I provided him with everything: her schedule, her usual routes, the subtle patterns I had observed, the small discrepancies in her stories. Michael listened, his calm demeanor a contrast to my turmoil, and promised results without drama, without spectacle. For 3 weeks, he gathered evidence. At first, nothing seemed unusual, but then the pieces fell into place. The lunches she claimed were with colleagues. The late meetings she said ran over time. The small gifts she denied giving herself all led to Nathan. Photos, receipts, timestamps, phone records, all meticulously collected. Michael even captured moments of their secret meetings, in ways I never could have imagined. Each discovery felt like a punch, yet it also brought a strange clarity. I could see everything now, raw and undeniable, and I no longer had to question my instincts. When the dossier arrived, it was a mix of devastation and relief. Devastation for the betrayal, relief for confirmation. Emily's lies weren't minor. They were deliberate. They weren't just secrets, they were a plan. A careful construction to hide our affair and protect Nathan while keeping me in the dark. Every photo, every text, every hidden detail told a story I already knew in my heart, but now could prove beyond doubt. I confronted her not with rage, but with silence, letting the weight of the evidence speak. She tried to explain, to apologize, to make excuses, but I had already seen the depth of her deceit. Her voice faltered, her confident demeanor crumbled, and I realized that honesty, delayed too long, loses its power. What mattered now was not forgiveness, but action. Not explanation, but closure. I would not be swayed by tears or pleas. For the first time since the phone call, I felt control not over her, not over Nathan, but over myself. I had chosen patience, investigation, and clarity over impulsive confrontation. I had chosen to see the truth fully before deciding the next step, and in that choice, I found strength. It wasn't easy. It wasn't clean. But it was mine. By the end of the month, every secret was documented, every lie confirmed, and every hidden motive revealed. The woman I had loved unconditionally had become a stranger, and the man she had chosen over me had been exposed in ways even they had anticipated. I was ready, not for revenge, not for anger, but for the path forward clear, firm, and stronger than I had ever been. The days after everything came to light were strange, quiet, and heavy with thought. I walked through my home as if seeing it for the first time, touching objects that once felt warm and familiar but now carried a subtle weight, a memory of trust that had been broken. Even the sunlight streaming through the windows seemed different, sharper somehow, casting shadows that mirrored the cracks in the life I had believed was unshakable. Emily and I no longer spoke much, and when we did, our words were measured, careful, almost sterile. Love was still there, in a faint, distant echo, but it had been replaced by something I could not ignore. Clarity. I spent hours reflecting, walking through the streets near our neighborhood, replaying the past months in my mind. Every lie, every late night, every hidden message. They all played like a slow, painful film. But with each step, I realized something important. Betrayal goes on. T just hurt because someone else fails. It hurts because it forces you to confront your own judgment, your own blind faith, and the parts of yourself that chose to ignore warning signs. And as much as it burned, it was also a lesson I could carry forward. One morning, a few weeks after the divorce was finalized, I took my usual walk through the park. The early sun touched the grass, making the dew sparkle, and the city around me seemed alive and ordinary. That's when I saw her, Millie. She was walking along the path, her face drawn with regret, her eyes fixed on the ground. When she noticed me, she paused, hesitated, then finally lifted her gaze, as if searching for forgiveness she might never earn. "Daniel," she began, her voice small and trembling. I'm so sorry for everything." I looked at her. Really, Luke? But the man she saw standing there was not the one who had blindly trusted her without question. He was changed, tempered by pain, sharpened by betrayal, and strengthened by truth. I didn't respond. I didn't nod. I didn't acknowledge her apology. There was nothing to be said. My silence said more than any words ever could. I had moved beyond the need for closure from her. My peace would not come from her acknowledgement, but from my own strength. She could regret all she wanted. It would not alter the choices I had made or the life I was building for myself. I continued my walk, feeling the air in my lungs and the solid ground beneath my feet. For the first time in months, I felt free in a way I hadn't anticipated. I realized that the pain I had endured, the nights of sleepless worry, the moments of heart-stopping realization, each of them had built something stronger inside me. Trust might have broken me once, but I had chosen to rise from it. I had chosen to take control of my life, to reclaim my future, and to honor my own worth rather than dwell on someone else's betrayal. In the weeks that followed, I focused on myself. on the things that truly mattered. My work, my passions, my friendships, all of them became anchors that reminded me I was capable of love, of trust, and of joy, even if it had to be rebuilt carefully. I met new people, forged new connections, but always with awareness, with discernment, and with the wisdom born from experience. I had learned that love without honesty is a fragile illusion, and that the strongest relationships are built not just on feelings, but on mutual respect, integrity, and transparency. Sometimes, late at night, I would think of Emelina with anger, not with bitterness, but with a quiet understanding. She had been part of my life, a chapter that taught me about vulnerability, deception, and resilience. I mourned the loss of the life we could have had, but I did not mourn myself. I was intact. I was wiser. I was stronger. And in that strength, I discovered a new kind of freedom. Freedom from doubt, from fear, and from the shadows of someone else's choices. Freedom to live fully, to trust carefully, and to love again on my own terms. The lesson was clear. Betrayal can shatter your world, but it cannot define it. Only you can do that. As I walked past the park that morning, sunlight streaming across the path, I felt the weight of the past finally lift. I had survived the pain, uncovered the truth, and reclaimed my life. Trust had broken me, but moving forward, embracing clarity, and protecting my own heart had made me stronger than I had ever imagined. And for the first time in a long while, I was not just surviving, I was truly living.